think throwing money at something is going to solve that problem. What has been brought about so far on the government bench is that once you give a disadvantaged group more money, they're able to accrue savings, and then therefore they're able to bring themselves out of that cycle of poverty and therefore better themselves for a better future. And we think that is great. We agree with that sentiment. However, what we do not agree with is the fact that the color of your skin should determine how likely you are to be able to get out of that economic cycle of poverty. And this, we see, is an institutionalized racism that is being further put in place by team government, both for the front half and the back half. What we see here, ladies and gentlemen, what we see from them is that if you're a poor white person, you are a poor white person who is struggling to feed their children, who is living hand to mouth, paycheck by paycheck. If you're a poor black person, you're doing essentially the exact same thing. However, simply because historically black people have been oppressed, you are, as a black person, far more likely to be able to get out of that cycle of poverty because the government will be giving you more, tax benefits. And we think this is fundamentally wrong. We already saw from team government's bench examples that were brought up about how we already have disproportionate taxing by taxing women less, by taxing people with children less. And we think this is not that big of a problem because anyone might have the possibility of having children. Anyone might have the possibility of getting married and therefore getting those benefits. However, the color of your skin cannot be changed. So therefore, this idea of this benefit that you're giving to them further institutionalizes the racism and the historic inequality that we have faced so far. And we think the social problem, as has been beautifully brought forward by the front half of opposition, is the backlash that's going to come out. And this further exacerbates the social inequality. And that will also make the income inequality even worse. And we think that's the problem. Now, ladies and gentlemen, from the back half of the debate, we have two main extensions. Number one, first of all, we need to understand what is the value of money. And number two, we need to understand that it is simply going to make racism even worse. First of all, what does money mean to you? Ladies and gentlemen, money could mean several things to you. Number one, the ability to buy things. We see, ladies and gentlemen, when you are giving someone the ability to buy things, when you're giving them more disposable income, when you're giving them more money to invest, that basically says that you are making them a better person. You're giving them the opportunity to become a better person economically. And that is the value of money for certain people. However, when you have tax benefits given to people who have been historically oppressed, you're saying that their wealth matters more to you. You are saying that these people need to have, basically you're saying that these people need to get more. So we think this compensation that is being paid for, no thank you ma'am, this compensation that you're paying to people who have been historically oppressed is basically saying that their value, their money matters more, and we think that is a problem. Secondly, we think that the value of money can also be seen as self-worth. Ladies and gentlemen, if net worth is supposed to equal self-worth, the idea that this motion is proposing is that you need to throw more money at those who have been historically oppressed to make themselves feel better about themselves, to make themselves feel that their worth is higher. And we think that is a great problem that we have in society, and that's going to further exacerbate it by saying that you need more help from the government, you need more help from the system to be able to feel better about yourself. To increase your self-worth, no thank you, to increase your self-worth, you need to find yourselves getting more support from the government. And this is a brilliant way we are going to be furthering authorization, and we think that is a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the idea of interracial marriages these days, for example. We see, ladies and gentlemen, that interracial marriages are one way that bring people of different communities together, that bring people together and allow them to learn about each other. And this discourse that we get from having interracial marriages, interracial children, is that they understand what the other side's like. But it still doesn't have this categorization where you say that you're going to pay this much tax if you're black, this much tax if you're white. Then there's this whole gray area about for those who are not fitting completely clearly into either group. And this further promotes the idea of categorizing, and we think categorizing is a problem. The income categories that we have right now, thank you, is absolutely the fairest way to ensure that someone is paying taxes. Ladies and gentlemen, we see that it is going to be difficult for anyone to escape poverty. But to say that just because you are black and because you have been historically oppressed, not necessarily oppressed right now, means that you are going to be further being promoted. I'll take front half.
We agree. It is a crime that people are categorized or socially constrained based on immutable characteristics. But those categorizations were instilled by the government to begin with. And you will only actually see a reversal in that and true equity if you give them disproportionate advantages.
Thank you. We see, ladies and gentlemen, that these economic inequalities are not exactly just economy. And giving them money is not going to be solving the problem. The best way to have these entrenched racism removed from society is to integrate everyone to show that they are the same person. However, this categorizing is just going to be otherizing them even further. Ladies and gentlemen, to use an example from not the developing world, but ladies and gentlemen, the Bangladeshi Constitution used to say that the subjugated and made to feel worse about themselves. However, the best way to include them back in the policy was to change the constitution to say no longer Bengalis, but rather Bangladeshis, which included them. And therefore, this inclusion is what's going to enable them to actually remove these barriers that they have in society. And we think categorizing them into black people or white people or ethnic minorities is just going to make it worse. And that further institutionalized racism. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's just see one thing. How fair is it for someone, or how right, or how practical is it for somebody to be paying for the mistakes their ancestors made several generations ago, ladies and gentlemen? We see that a poor black man, or a poor white man, or a poor brown man, who are all equally struggling, will be able to, are basically having trouble getting themselves out of the cycle of poverty. However, historically, the ancestors of the white man have oppressed the other two groups, and therefore, they themselves are now having to pay the price for it. And we think this is fundamentally wrong. We do not think it is proper or fair for team proposition on this side to make sure that those who are not necessarily complicitly, who are not necessarily actively discriminating against someone should be made to pay the price for it. We think, ladies and gentlemen, that if you are going to have social problems, that these social problems are further going to be instigated and they're further going to be exacerbated when you're otherizing everyone else. Ladies and gentlemen, if my ancestors were poor, if my ancestors were terrible people to ethnic minorities within my country, I might not necessarily be doing the same thing. I might perhaps be advocating on their behalf. But simply as a result of this policy, I will be made to suffer more just because my ancestors in the past did it. And we think this is fundamentally incorrect because we do not want otherization. We do not want to have this generational gap. And while we're touched by the rhetoric that was brought up from back half, we do not think that this cycle of poverty that should be escaped should be based upon the color of your skin. It should be based upon you as an individual and not how you live life. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. I will now invite the government witness on the government side of this debate.